It is Locked On Jazz for the 30th of January. Walker Kessler's now started 9 games. Let's take a check-in on his impact and what's taking place. Rumors, and more rumors as we're now 10 days away from the trade deadline. What names are being mentioned and what does it mean for the Utah Jazz? And it's a Monday Trends check-in. That's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so much for being a part of our group and joining us each and every day. We are available on all podcasting apps. We're available on YouTube. You can follow and subscribe and be a part of our Jazz community. And you can hit that bell to be notified every single time we put something up on YouTube. Please do. Greatly appreciate 5-star reviews. Are great. I used to do something where we'd kind of take a second and thank 5-star reviews. I should go back to that. Appreciate you guys for all the support and what you've done for this program. All right, we have a wild thing here with 3 days off. I might do an interview coming up this week with a Locked On NBA draft person to check in and kind of get a landscape of where the draft is. We kind of were also focused on it. Now I think we're also focused on whether or not the Jazz make a move and what the trades are and things like that. So, but I might take a second, probably talk to Leaf Tulane or one of the other guys who do great work on that Locked On NBA draft show this week, if that's something of interest to you. All right, let's get to it. I thought it was interesting. Walker Kessler has now started 9 games. And we could back this up a little bit. Like, you try to look at Walker and Will Hardy, as I've said, I thought put him in the deep end of the pool. First of all, Will Hardy just started him. He just played, his right amount. Then right about, I'd say December, Will Hardy goes and puts Walker Kessler in the deep end of the pool, but he puts floaties on him. Then, right about December 19th, we go to Cleveland. He has to start, and he ends up playing over 20 minutes in all but kind of 3 games in there. And then in 3 games in there, he kind of seems like he hit the rookie wall, and he wasn't as effective, and he plays. But then coming out of that, Kelly Olynyk gets hurt, and now it's time. Like, they just throw him back to the deep end. So there's 2 areas where I could have done this research. One was to kind of back it up and start it right around December 20th. We're in Detroit. We're in Cleveland, that whole area. Or the other would be to start it on January 10th when he makes his start. So one's 20 games and the other's 9 games. And so it was kind of a hard sample size. But I looked at the 9 games for now, and I might quickly change it here as we're on the fly. You might get a little, I'm kind of doubting it. You guys get this from me every now and then. So since the 9 games in which Walker Kessler has started for the Utah Jazz, and, let's be perfectly clear, this sample size is pretty poor. It's 9 games. The Jazz defense now ranks 13th in the NBA. Okay, that's a pretty dramatic difference. If you do back it up to December 19th, the Jazz defense ranks 20th in the NBA. Okay, that's pretty interesting because prior to December 18th, if you go back and start us at the beginning of the year and you put us at December 18th, prior to Walker kind of having the increased time, I think we rank 25th in the league or 26th in the league defensively. 25th. So prior to December 18th, we rank 25th in the league defensively. Walker starts to increase play on December 19th. We rank 20th in the league defensively. Walker starts to start January 10th, and we rank 13th in the NBA defensively. We'll talk more about this during the week because I asked Will Hardy if you could wave a wand of what you want to do defensively this year for the final 30 games. What would it be? It would be better defensively. Okay, well, there's a start. That's a pretty incredible start. Is it all Walker? Probably not. Transition defense has gotten better. They made some other changes in the meantime. It would be oversimplifying. But let's take a look at some of Walker's statistics to see, because the big question was when we threw Walker in the deep end and had him with floaties, even Will Hardy said in the press conference, hey, 70% of his minutes have been done against backups. So let's see what happens. So now we have 9 games where he started. This is why I chose the 9. In which you no longer, at least for the first and third quarters, and probably for the fourth, are not hiding him. He's now playing the other team's starter. The 9 games that he started are, okay, again, small sample size. Orlando, not a dominant center. Philadelphia, I think Embiid is pretty good, except for the fact that that night he was only moderate. He only scored 30. He did a great job. Cleveland, Jared Allen's real. Walker did a great job. Minnesota didn't have Rudy. Zubac's real. Nick Claxton's real. I like Plumlee. Nurkic is interesting, and Dallas didn't have a center. Okay, so it's a relatively decent run-through. I'm not trying to diminish anything Walker's doing. I'm just trying to keep us balanced. So here's some notes on this. In the 9 games for the season, Walker has impact. This is mind-boggling. Okay, I don't want to let's just be perfectly honest. As much as I could try to temper and hold back and this and that, this is mind-boggling. For the season, Walker's impacted 6 shots inside 6 feet a game. Since December 9th, so I did 9th just because we didn't play, so I just made sure. He's impacted 9 shots a game at the rim. That's Rudy Gobert-esque levels. And I don't like the comparisons to Rudy Gobert, except for the fact he's the best defensive player in the world. And so there's actually some value to using him as our reference point, because you all understand and everyone understands what Rudy Gobert is. But if you look at, so he's impacted 9 shots a game at the rim. If you go back to Rudy's best defensive year in 2019, in 1920, when Rudy was at his peak, that he was impacting, and this is the big question on Rudy right now, is suddenly he's not impacting this many shots. This is the kind of, Rudy was impacting 9 shots a game at his peak. So you go to 1920 and go to Rudy, go find it up. You can look at a defensive dashboard inside 6 feet on NBA stats, but why do it? Because I'll do it for you. And you'll find that Rudy Gobert, Domantas Sabonis was top of the league at 9 right now. The best in the league is Domantas Sabonis. Impact Joel Embiid, 8.6. Miles Turner, 8.3. Since January 9th or 10th, Walker Kessler's impacting 9 shots a game through. Here's Rudy, 1920, led the league at 8.3 shots affected at the rim. The next year, 2021, Rudy Gobert was at 8.3. The next year, 21-22, this was the concern, Rudy dropped to 7.2. 9 would lead the league. Now, it doesn't lead the league because of the fact that in that stretch there are other people that have done this. But that's the level of 9 shots. To go from 6 to 9 is incredible. So Walker Kessler is just getting to a tremendous amount of shots. Part 2 of this, in that stretch, by the way, Jokic is the highest at 11. Sabonis 9, Mobley 9, Claxton 9, Vucevic 9, Kessler 8.9. So 9 shots a game. Here's the next stretch. Point on this. In that 9 games, teams are shooting 14 percentage points below their expected value on those shots. The expected value is 65.6 and it's 51.6. Okay. There's 4 guys that are better. Draymond is at 17.7. Miles Turner is at 18.9. Just crazy note, if you're a Laker, have a Laker fan. Thomas Bryant, center for the Lakers, is plus 17.7. I don't know how that's humanly possible in 9 games. Teams are shooting 83% against him at the rim. Jaren Jackson Jr., who's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year, is at 18.8. And Bismack Biyombo at 5 shots a game is in this as well. Jared Vanderbilt's actually been really good at the rim recently, too. Could be just fortunate. I mean, it's not a lot of shots. So suddenly we have Walker Kessler, since he has started, He's now impacting 3 more shots a game at the rim. And instead of he was being great the whole time at 12.5, he's actually gotten better and is at 14.0. That's pretty encouraging for the opening stretch of a youngster with his floaties taken off in the deep end. It's pretty incredible. It's pretty exciting. So, like, when the Jazz head into this, like, trade deadline, they have 2 pieces. And I think they have more, but they have 2 guaranteed pieces that match with who they are and that they're looking to see how players complement. And in the future, they're going to look and see how players complement them. Walker's going to have some limitations. Big guys in a league in which is getting small and versatile and the drop big is difficult to play at times is going to have some difficulties. Rim protection is still the number 1 key to all defense. And this kid, as a rookie, is going toe-to-toe with the best in the world at rim defense right now. It's incredible. For the season, by the way, we're 7 points better when he's on the floor. 4 percentage fewer shots at the rim, and they make 5 percentage points less. I can't break that down since January 10th. Since January 10th, the Jazz have the best rim defense in the entire NBA. 7 points better. So since the Jazz have moved Walker Kessler to the starting lineup, they have the best rim defense in the entire NBA. That, to me, is pretty exciting. And I think showing some signs and are great signs for where the Jazz are heading. Who are the names being mentioned in the trade rumors, and how do they impact the Utah Jazz? Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross, also in Logan. Chevy is Americana. And the Chevy truck, there's nothing quite like the Silverado, 2023 Silverado LD. No payments for 90 days right now when you drive it home. The Colorado is the zippier truck. It's kind of fun. Get you out there in that Colorado, doing all the kind of truck things that you want to have your truck do. The Silverado's got a bunch of different models for you. There's a 2022 Colorado that's available right now with a no regrets pricing at $45,000. It's a pretty great deal for that Colorado. Also going on at Murdoch Chevy is the great SUV lineup of Chevy cars. They have I feel the Suburban and Tahoe are legendary, but the Equinox, Traverse, the Blaze, and the Trailblazers are kind of unsung there in the middle of the whole thing. And then if you're looking for an electric car, the Bolt has gotten rave reviews, and there is a Silverado electric coming that you can sign up for now. It's all at Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and Logan. If you're going to stop by, please feel free to give me a buzz and let me set up a meeting for you first. Today's show is also brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks with you make a little deposit and you get, yes, I think you know how this works. Do you know how this works? Are you ready to tell me how this works? It is 100% deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. PrizePicks is your daily fantasy game. It's easy to play. It's fun. It gets you involved. It makes everyone around you. It brings the amp up level to the game, and it's easy to play. You pick 2 to 6 players. You get it 2 to 6 players and get it done. Do it at the app. You can win up to 25 times your money. No competing against other people, just you against projected values. I'm telling you, every sport imaginable. Cricket, Eurobasket, esports, or college basketball. All you want to do, safe and fast and easy withdrawals. Download the PrizePicks app. Go to PrizePicks.com. Sign up for your daily fantasy sports. First-time users, 100% instant deposit match up to $100. The promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit 100, PrizePicks will get you 100. If you deposit 50, 50, 7250, 7250, 150, you just get 100 because it's up to 100. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON to sign up for an instant deposit match of $100. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. For your second listen, Locked On Sports today. 22 minutes. Everything you need in sports. I also mentioned Locked On NBA Draft today. It's a decent little thought to start getting into that. All right, let's talk trade deadline. Rumors are flying. My favorite report that came out during the week was that Matt Moore of Action Sports and Locked On Nuggets and Locked On NBA does great work. Really, very unsung, great national reporter. that the Hawks' new front office is unlikely to trade John Collins. Here was my reaction when I read this. Might be true. Matt's good. That's clearly what someone told him. And the Hawks do have a new front office. Travis Schlenk is out. This also sounded a lot like dang, man, the value for John Collins is depressed in the marketplace right now, and we cannot get what we want for John Collins, so we're going to leak out there 9 days before the trade deadline that we're not trading John Collins to see if we can up the value. We're in that stage. We're in that stage where it's hard to tell if anything is truthful or not. Okay? That's really where we are. We've crossed over. It's the Monday before the trade deadline comes on the 9th. Now, the crazy thing for the Jazz is that we're just home this whole time. So next Thursday is the trade deadline. We'll be in the air to Toronto when it happens, I believe. I don't know our exact itinerary, but it's a long, all-day flight. So generally, I think there's a good chance of it. So the most interesting report that impacts the Jazz right now is the Jazz, we all know it, right? Like there's just a collection of players. We have one at every single position that is being rumored right now. So a little bit of what I kind of find myself doing right now is trying to watch positionally. Like what's out on the market positionally? What's the value? Who are the other options? What's their expense? What's there for the Jazz? I'm 100% convinced of two things about what the Jazz are going to do at the trade deadline. One is I'm 100% convinced the Jazz will not be orchestrating any type of on-court intention for this year. So in other words, I don't think the Jazz are actually going to go dump players for no value solely for the sake to lose 22 of their final 24 and get the 6th pick of the draft. It's not very hard for us to go get the 6th or 7th pick of the draft at this point. But I don't think we're going to do it. It doesn't match the makeup of anything I've seen. There's been no indication of that. And I do understand, like from a Jazz fan standpoint, we're 26-26. The Lakers have 27 losses. We could very easily sneak in and be probably, and the Raptors are 23-28. If the Raptors move forward, and Indiana would be the only other wild card in there, very easily go get ourselves to the 6th pick of the draft or the 6th slot of the lottery. Like that seems like a super easy thing for us to do and just slide into it. Might be some argument that it's that there's some value to it. I think the thing I love about what the Jazz have done, this is a little differently than what I was going to say, is that by being 26-26 right now, if they do make a move right now, regardless if they make a move that maybe lessens the talent on the roster at the given time, they're still going to play really important games the rest of the way. Lowry, Walker, Ochai, Collin, whomever else needs it, are going to get experience in playing important games with a playoff rush. Like Malik Beasley shared with us post-game that he asked Will Hardy to put the standings up on the locker room wall when you walk into the locker room. When you walk into the Jazz locker room at Hall, the standings are now taped up on the wall. So you now have guys playing games with the understanding of like this has playoff implications here for the final 30 games of the year. That's going to be true regardless of what the Jazz do between now and January 9th because of the fact the Jazz have actually put themselves in this position, which is great. So that's probably the most singularly exciting thing going on here to me is that regardless of what the Jazz do between now and January 9th or February 9th, they're going to Lowry, Collin, Ochai, Walker, Nikhil, Talen Horton-Tucker, the guys you're watching to see what their next steps are in their career, are going to play games that are super important. Mike, Jordan, Kelly, they've done this stuff before. If they're still on the roster, they've done this stuff before. Malik's been to 2 playoff series. They're not learning something new. Second thing, I don't think the Jazz are going to orchestrate outcome of games either direction. So in other words, I don't think the Jazz are going to just go dump 3 players to make sure they get the 6th pick of the draft. And I don't think the Jazz are going to go rent a player for the final 30 games to go make the playoffs either. I just don't think either of those two are going to happen here. What I do think could happen is that you move a player because the value proposition for the future of the franchise is so good that you have to do it. Which also leads to, I don't think you're going to see the Jazz just dump. Danny Ainge in his career, there's just no track record of just dumping players for the sake of trying to lose basketball games, Portland did it last year, right? I think they lost 22 of their final 24. That's kind of the reference point I keep going at. So here are the names are being mentioned. And so I'm looking at it from a standpoint of like, what's going on at that positional group and how does it impact the player we have at that positional group and what their value is going to be. So the first positional group is point guard. Kawhi Leonard, nice enough to say he would like a point guard on his roster. There seems to be a little bit of a point guard shuffle about to happen in the NBA. The names that are being mentioned are Fred VanVleet in Toronto, D'Angelo Russell in Minnesota, Kyle Lowry in Miami, and Mike Conley obviously has been mentioned. Mike is so much the glue of this roster. But those are the four names that are being mentioned most often right now around the league in what could be somewhat of a point guard shuffle. Interesting news in Chicago that Lonzo Ball might not play this year. I don't know how that impacts them, but I think that's an interesting news note. Jay Crowder is got to get moved here at some point. The Bucks and the Bulls continue to get mentioned in that. The Jazz, can the Jazz become a third team in some sort of deal there? Interesting little thing out of Denver this week that Bones Highland is being mentioned. This to me is the first sign that Denver, 34-16, 2 games ahead of Memphis with the MVP and Jokic, suddenly sees like Calvin Booth sees like, oh, we can win this thing. We might be the best team in the NBA. We can win this thing. Denver's got a real chance to be in the NBA Finals against Boston, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, or Brooklyn right now. Denver's maybe better than everyone else, and if they're playing defense, when we look at trends here, if they continue to, that's a great sign for them. So are they suddenly willing to move Bones Highland? Is there a piece that they need? Their depth is not great. They really live by having their starters on the floor all the time. That's a really interesting debate. Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow on an off day. Jakob Poeltl continuing to be mentioned. Celtics keep floating around there. PJ Washington out of Charlotte is a name that keeps getting floated. Alex Caruso, Chicago, being mentioned. Mason Plumlee in Charlotte. I think anyone on Charlotte. Gary Trent Jr. along with Fred VanVleet. OG Anunoby talked about an awful lot when we were in Portland. Josh Hart out of Portland as a trade piece. Kyle Kuzma, Terry Rozier. Those are all the names being floated and talked about and mentioned right now. Terry Rozier probably fits into that point guard mix of Russell, VanVleet, Lowry, and Rozier as point guard shuffle. Your centers that are being kind of talked about are Plumlee and Poeltl. Your wings are hard to find, but your shooters are Trent, Hart, Kuzma. Kuzma is just a big signing in the offseason you got to commit to. So I don't think you're going to see like the landscape changing trade. You're going to see pieces moved at some point here. And I think that's what will make this trade deadline interesting. All right, trends Monday. We like to look at them every single Monday. We like to look at trends and see what's going on in the league and who's hot and who's not. And we do that as we continue. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by TurboTax. You know why? Go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do not taxes. Show your eyes things that are not taxes. Unpack a moving box of not taxes. Taste not taxes. Sing not taxes. Hope not taxes. Sleep through the night. Grab a saddle. Ride not taxes into the sunset. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes for you start to finish. Ensure your taxes are done right. Guaranteed. So you can relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax. Full service products. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Do not do your taxes. Go to TurboTax.com/guarantees for more details. Locked On NBA gives you the breakdown of the recap with Locked On game to game each day. Feel free to grab that. I'm going to put a little link up for Locked On NBA Draft if you want to add that into your second listen. It's that time of year. Conference games are going on. I'm going to start catching Raphael and Sam and Richard and Leaf and getting that as a part of my regular routine so that I'm up to date for you and can embed myself in the draft and be on top of it for you this year. So we'll have fun with that. Let's do trends. I love Trends Monday. We've switched it. We go to the long version of 10 games now, rather than the cleaning the glass 2 weeks and then we do 2 weeks second. We've kind of, I think we've gotten better at this. We're improving every day, right? We're all getting better at this show each and every day. All right, let's do it. Last 10 games, the best team in the NBA is the Sacramento Kings. Isn't that crazy? The Sacramento Kings are 7-3, but their differential is at 10.0. This might be part of the reason why you hear people talk about the first 20 games are more important than the last 20 games, and we have the middle part of the season, the dog days, which make it really hard to evaluate who the best teams in the league are. Because the second best team in the NBA in differential over the last 10 games is the Oklahoma City Thunder. So Sacramento is 1, Oklahoma City Thunder is 2. These might just be teams playing hard. Denver is 3. Milwaukee's 4. That's important because Chris Middleton's kind of come back, and they are just busting offensively. Keep an eye on Milwaukee. Philadelphia's 5. Cleveland's 6. Minnesota has clicked in. They've won 7 of 10, and they have the 7th best differential in the NBA. Clippers are 8. Celtics are 9. Jazz are 10. Good for the Jazz. Still staying through it. Will Hardy's got them still playing hard. Top offensive teams in the last 10 games. Kings, Clippers, 76ers, Blazers, Raptors, Hawks. Kings are the number 1 offensive team in the league last 10 games. They've been just incredible. We had that last week too. Clippers, 76ers, Embiid. Did you guys watch Embiid and what he did the other night? That was insane against Denver. That was crazy stuff. Late game watch right there. Top 5 defensive teams are Miami, Chicago, Boston, Oklahoma, and Minnesota. So Minnesota may have figured out how to use Rudy here. Their last 10 games, they're the top 5 defensive team. They've won 7 of 10. They're playing well. Keep an eye on it. Teams that can't score right now, New Orleans, who's lost 9 of 10, simply can't score. Houston, Indiana, Phoenix, San Antonio, and Miami. Miami just still hovering in this. Miami's won 7 of 10 while not being able to score. That's crazy. Teams not defending, San Antonio, Portland, Indiana, New York, Detroit, and Houston. Teams really scuffling here, San Antonio, Indiana, without Tyrese Halliburton. Houston, Pelicans, Detroit, and Charlotte. Pelicans are really on a dive right now. Now, they just got Brandon Ingram back. They hopefully get Zion back recently. But they're worn out. They've played too many games without their main guys, and they've just worn out. And makes it really interesting. Tomorrow we're going to dig into the standings because I think the next stretch up to the trade deadline is into the All-Star break is fascinating. So we'll look at that tomorrow. All right, over the last 2 weeks, the top teams in the NBA, non-blowout minutes according to Clean the Glass, Milwaukee is 1. Philadelphia is 2. Cleveland is 3. Chicago's 4. Washington's 5. Utah's 6. How about that? Milwaukee being 1 is super interesting. They've won 6 of 7. Giannis dropped 50 last night. They're back. Cleveland, who I really thought was struggling, didn't look right to me, just continues to defend so well. The top offenses in the NBA over the last 2 weeks, Philadelphia 1, Clippers 2, so Sacramento's cooled off a little bit here. Philadelphia 1, Clippers 2, Milwaukee 3, Utah 4. So here we've got a show we did a long time ago. Can the Utah Jazz get average defensively? And they've done that since they've added Walker Kessler, and the offense hasn't slipped. Makes us a pretty interesting team all of a sudden. Makes us a really interesting team, actually. Philadelphia 1, LA 2, Milwaukee 3, Utah 4, Atlanta 5, Toronto 6. Toronto, our next opponent, 6th offensively. They've struggled all year offensively. Defensively, the top teams right now, Chicago's just way better than everyone else right now defensively over the last 2 weeks for some reason, only in 5 games. Then Miami, Phoenix, Boston, Cleveland, and Minnesota again. Teams that cannot score right now, we go back to New Orleans, who's 6 points worse than any other team in the NBA over the last 2 weeks. They really just cannot score. Boston is struggling to score also, which is interesting. That's a surprise because that team's great. Charlotte, Miami, Houston, and Indiana, again, without Tyrese Halliburton, and Phoenix without Devin Booker. Teams that are not defending right now, San Antonio, New York, Clippers, boy, are they in and out. Number 2 offensively recently, 28th defensively. Earlier this year, they were the flip. Who knows what they are? Indiana and Portland and Atlanta not defending. Teams with the worst differential recently, New Orleans is just a mess. They've lost 8 straight. Indiana -12, San Antonio -12, then Detroit, Houston, and New York. That's your trends. It's interesting to see the Jazz there. My big takeaway there is, frankly, the Jazz offense holding ground while the defense improves under Walker Kessler's realm as the starting center. Interesting team we have right now. We'll dig into a little bit more of the races, more trade rumors each of the next 9 days. We'll keep an eye on that. And thanks so much for being a part of our group and being a part of Locked On Jazz. I thank you so much. It's so fun to have you. Check at the office and see who else is a Locked On Jazz member. If not, tell them to join in and be a part of our group. It is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast in the Utah Jazz, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network.